How to water cucumbers is the difference between a crisp slice and a bitter spit out. You grew your own, watched it fatten, took the first bite and spat it straight back out. It was not the seed and it was not bad luck. It was almost certainly the watering. I am Mikal. I drive buses in Belfast, and today we meet the thirstiest, most unforgiving crop in the garden. The whole garden. So let me set the scene, because you need to respect what a cucumber actually is before you can grow one. If the tomato we met last week is thirsty, the cucumber is in another league entirely. It is one of the hungriest drinkers you will ever put in a pot. Think about how it is built. It throws out big, broad, soft leaves, acres of them, and it grows at a frightening pace, and it hangs long, heavy fruit that are themselves almost entirely water. All three of those things are engines that pull water up and breathe it out into the air hour after hour. And the demand does not stay level. Just like the tomato, a cucumber drinks far more once it is carrying fruit than it did as a young plant. But it starts from a higher base and climbs to a steeper peak. On a hot day in July, a big cucumber plant in a container can drink that container dry, then drink it dry again before nightfall. Once a day is not enough for a cropping cucumber in high summer. That is the fact everything else in this episode hangs from. This is a plant that will not forgive you for a dry afternoon, and it has a very nasty way of letting you know. So here is that nasty way of letting you know, and it is worth one honest minute of chemistry, because it explains everything. A cucumber plant naturally makes a group of defense compounds called cucurbitacins. Say it how you like. The point is what they do. They are the plant's own bitter poison, brewed to make leaves and fruit taste vile to insects and grazing animals, so they get left alone. In the wild cucumber, the whole thing is mouth-puckeringly bitter. Now, plant breeders have spent a very long time breeding the bitterness out of the fruit we eat, so a happy, well-grown modern cucumber is sweet and mild. But, and this is the whole point, the plant still carries the machinery to make those bitter compounds, and it switches that machinery back on when it is stressed. The single biggest trigger for that stress is a shortage of water, made worse by heat and by wild swings between dry and wet. Put a cucumber under drought stress and it does the ancient thing. It floods bitterness back into its tissues. That bitterness gathers most at the stem end of the fruit, the bit nearest the vine, and just under the skin. So a bitter cucumber is not a mystery, and it is not your fault as a cook. It is a stressed plant shouting at you in the only language it has, and 9 times out of 10 the stress was thirst. And bitterness is only the first complaint. Reach into a dry, struggling cucumber plant and you will often pull out fruit that are the wrong shape entirely. Fat at one end and pinched to a stumpy point at the other, curled round like a letter C. Or tiny fruit that yellow at the tip and drop off the plant before they ever get going. All of that is the same story as the bitterness, told with shape instead of taste. A cucumber fruit fills out with water. It is most of what the thing is made of. So the fruit can only swell evenly, end to end, if there is a steady, even supply of water arriving the whole time it is developing. Let the plant run short partway through, and the part of the fruit that was still growing simply stalls. You get a fruit that is normal, where it filled early, and pinched and stunted where the water ran out. And when the stress is really biting, the plant makes a hard business decision. It cannot support all its fruit, so it aborts some. It yellows the smallest ones and drops them to save itself. So bent, stumpy, dropped fruit is not a pollination mystery or a disease. It is very often just a plant that got too dry too often while it was trying to build something that is nearly all water. So if you take one idea from today, take this one. With a cucumber, it is not simply the total amount of water that matters, it is the steadiness of it. Just like the tomato, the villain of the piece is the swing, the lurch from bone dry to soaking wet and back again. But a cucumber punishes that swing far harder than a tomato does, because it is drinking so much faster that it hits empty so much sooner. Picture the usual pattern. The plant is left to get properly dry over a busy couple of days. It stresses. It starts brewing bitterness. It stalls a fruit or two. Then the gardener notices the wilt, feels guilty and drowns it. Now the plant lurches the other way, gorging on water, and any fruit that had set a firm skin may split. Dry, flood. Every swing writes itself into the crop as bitterness, as a bend, as a dropped fruit, as a split. A cucumber kept at an even, steady damp, never allowed to hit that dry wall in the first place, mostly just gets on with being sweet and straight. The plant is not asking for a heroic once-a-week soaking. It is asking you never to let it go dry. So how do you keep a plant this thirsty steady when it can empty a pot twice a day? First, if you possibly can, grow it in the biggest container you have room for, or straight in a bed. A tiny pot on a cucumber is cruelty. A bigger volume of soil holds more water and buys you a bigger margin before it hits dry, which is the whole battle. Second, water at the base and often. Get the water straight onto the soil around the roots, never over those big leaves, both to keep the plant fed and to keep it healthy, because a wet cucumber leaf invites mildew. In high summer, that may mean watering morning and evening, and that is normal for this crop, not a sign you are doing something wrong. Third, mulch the surface thickly. A good layer of compost or bark over the roots slows the drying and evens everything out while your back is turned. Fourth, feed it once it is fruiting, because a plant growing this fast is hungry as well as thirsty, and a high potash tomato feed suits a cucumber just as well. Big pot, water at the base, little and often, mulch and feed. Respect the thirst and it rewards you.